We're here with Robert Evans, actor, producer, former head of Paramount Pictures during probably its greatest period in the late 60s, early 70s. Also the author of a book, The Kid Stays in the Picture, about his life, which has recently been adapted into a film. We have a trailer for the film, which we'll look at right now.
Dream. Is it as good as it looks?
If you live by the sword, know damn well you could die by it.
And when it all came crashing down...
I've been shot down, bloody, accused, threatened, disgraced, betrayed. No one wanted me in the picture.
Rose to his feet again.
Tough? You bet it is. But I ain't complaining. Nothing comes easy.
The Kid Stays in the Picture.
I want to talk about the film and the book that is the inspiration for the film. But they're both about your life, so maybe we should start when you first got into the entertainment business. That was as an actor. How did you first become an actor?
I was an actor from the time I was 12 years old. I was in radio. I did varying radio shows called Radio Reader's Digest, Henry Aldridge, Let's Pretend. I did accents well. I was the best Nazi in town, doing Nazi accents on varying radio shows. The radio soap operas, basically, and Saturday morning shows called Let's Pretend was a big show. And I was out on that every Saturday. And then I tried to get theater work. I got a little theater work. And
wait, you started in radio, how old were you when you first got into radio?
At 12 o'clock. At 12 o'clock, I should say. Not 12 o'clock. I wanted to be out of school at 12 o'clock so I could go out for my auditions. I started about the age of 12. And... worked. I've had a Social Security card since 1942, and radio at that time was very big. That was pre-television, and I started doing some television shows at that time. But my career ended rather abruptly. It's a strange story. There was an agent in New York called Chamberlain Brown, and through his offices walked every big star that went to Hollywood. At that time, there were 88 Broadway shows. Imagine, 88 Broadway shows. And there were 8 major studios, each having 60 or 70 actors under contract. And he used to have auditions every Tuesday at the New Amsterdam Theater, where every top producer, head of talent, like Darryl Zanuck would be there, Jack Warner would be there, Nick Skank would be there, Louis B. Mayer, when he was in town, was there. And to get an audition to appear at the New Amsterdam Theater to do a scene, you had to have a lot of experience and audition for Chamberlain Brown first, which I did, and I gave him my experience, and he gave me a date in 8 weeks to be there on a Tuesday afternoon. So I didn't know quite what to rehearse to do, so my brother, who had just gotten out of the Army, we lived at home with my family at the time, I wrote a scene, a 9-page scene that about a brother who just gets out of the Army. He finds his younger brother playing around with his girl. My brother only had one line to say. He said, "I've been serving our country and you've been playing around with my girl." That's all he had to say. And then I do 9 pages of dialogue. And then at the end, he shoots me. So we're backstage, waiting to go on. And I remember Lou Nova, who was a heavyweight contender at the time, was the person right before us, a big, tall guy. He did his piece, and then Chamberlain Brown comes out. He says, "Well, now a young actor who I've seen on radio and on the theater, who I think could be a young leading man. I'd like to introduce Robert Evans." My brother walks left stage, I walk right stage. My brother's supposed to say the first word. "I hear you fooling around with my girl." And we're looking at each other. Dry ice, he can't say a word. So I'm looking at him. I'm waiting for to say my 9 pages of dialogue. So I give him a push. I says, "What did you call me down here for?" He still can't get a word out of his mouth. He says, "Come on, Charlie, what's wrong?" He still can't get a word out of his mouth. I said, "Come on, tell me what's wrong with me. What did I do wrong?" He takes out his gun and he shoots me. My 9 pages of dialogue, I never had a chance to do it. I fall to the floor. He looks down at me, and we both burst out laughing. So at first, the audience thinks we're a comedy act for 30 seconds, and we can't stop laughing. They close the curtains on us, and Chamberlain Brown comes out. He says, "You hyenas, get them out of here." And the more he talks, the more we laugh. We're laughing like hyenas now. He says, "Grab those hyenas, get them out." We pulled up our shirt sleeves, both of us were thrown out of the backstage. We walked down 42nd Street, still laughing. And that's what you call love.
And the end of your first acting career.
End of the first acting career. I never got past Third Avenue after that, or even West or East. But Charlie has been, I suppose, the longest love affair of my life.
And then you went into business. Do you remember what Lou Nova auditioned with?
He did a soliloquy of his own. The words didn't make much sense. I'm a punch-drunk fighter.
So then Charlie had gone. Charlie later went into the garment business.
Well,
you joined him, right?
He started a firm called Evan Picone, and I was under contract at the time to Paramount, and they dropped me after 6 months. I had no job, and Charlie offered me the opportunity of coming to work for him because he had a thriving business, but to start a new division called Diva, which is making women's pants. And in those days, it was easier to sell a man a dress than a woman wear pants. And I had to convince women to wear pants, so I was in women's pants at the age of 21. And I figured a way of doing it, going around to various breakfast shows on television, and have 12 models wear women's pants, from Boston to Cleveland to Detroit to Kansas City to San Francisco. They had these early morning radio shows, television shows, where they had no money to spend, so I'd give them a half-hour fashion show for nothing. But at the end, I would say, men are intransigent. Why can't women wear pants in the family too? And that one line started a new realm of fashion, women's pants, and I think women's pants will last longer in fashion than any of my films will last on the screen.
And I want to talk about about your second career as an actor, and I think we might have a clip that goes with that, which we do. You went out to Hollywood to do some work for the company, right?
I was in Los Angeles opening a boutique at Bullock's on women's pants, and it was.
That takes us to the clip, I think.
Okay, let's
As
see
I
what
recall,
it is.
I believe it picks up right about there.
It does.
My friend Jimmy Cagney is playing the title role of Lon Chaney. Irving was the guy who discovered him and made him the biggest star in silent film. Do you know Mr. Evans? He was only 20 at the time. He was even too young to sign the checks, but not too young to run a studio. I'm thinking to myself, wow, this can't be happening to me. Monsieur, it would be an honor. Why not? Because Cagney's the one guy I've always wanted to meet.
So, Men of a Thousand Faces. You played Irving Thalberg.
That's correct.
That kind of prophesied where you were going in your life.
Strangely, it did, yes.
Yeah, very strange.
The first scene I had, I tested with Jimmy Cagney, but if I hadn't had the experience as an actor before, I would never have gotten the part. It's an old story. Luck is when opportunity meets preparation. And I did the test with Cagney, and he said, okay, kid, you're all right. But the next day, when we went out to shoot the scenes, I couldn't open my mouth. I was too scared. One take, he walks into my office. It's a big office. Actually, Irving Thalberg was only 20 years old when he was head of the studio. He was too young to sign the checks at the end of the week, but he was bright enough to run the studio. And Cagney walks in as Lon Chaney and looks around the office, and he said, are you Irving Thalberg? And I can't get a word out of my mouth. Take 2, the same thing. Take 3, the same thing. Take 4, the same thing. Take 5, the same thing. I know I'm going to get fired. They have no film on me anyway. Cagney comes over to me and says, come on outside, kid. We walk down the street at Universal. Let me tell you something, kid. I'm only 5'4". And the first scene I did with a guy, he was 6'3". And when the scene was over, I'm 6'3", he's 5'4". Don't be scared of me. Come on, let's get it on. And that's the generosity the guy had, and at least I got the words out of my mouth.
Yeah. Who was the director of that one?
Joseph Pevin. He was an actor. He kept on saying, pick up the pace to me. I couldn't pick up the pace. I couldn't get anything out of my mouth.
Yeah. And that led, I'm assuming that led to the role you played in The Sun Also Rises, a bullfighter, which is I think the farthest thing from typecasting that I could picture. How did that happen?
Well, I made matador pants, so why shouldn't I be a matador? You know, I was really, it didn't lead to it actually. I went back to my business at Evan Picone, and I was out with my brother one night dancing at El Morocco, and Darryl Zanuck happened to be sitting there, and I was doing a tango with a girl, and he points to his wife, Virginia, and said, that kid's right to play Pedro Romero in The Sun Also Rises, opposite Ava Gardner. To make a very long story short, I get the part, which I had a test for as well, and I'm sent down to Morelia, Mexico. There's one problem. No one wanted me in the picture. Ernest Hemingway was insulted. They picked a guy like me. Darryl Zanuck found a nightclub to play Pedro Romero, which in true life was more or less his life story. Tyrone Power, who had done Blood and Sand, thought he's all wrong for the picture. Mel Ferrer, who played in The Brave Bulls, says he's going to ruin the picture. Ava Gardner wanted a boyfriend, Walter Chiari, to be in the picture, and the director didn't want me, and Peter Vertel, the writer, didn't want me. I was awfully lonely being down in a strange place, and I'm practicing my Ketas and my Veronicas. I feel like an idiot down there. I'm wearing a rubber girdle, trying to lose weight in my waist here, and no one's even talking to me. And they send a cable out to Darryl Zanuck, and they say, with Robert Evans playing Pedro Romero, the sun also rises, it will be a disaster. Signed, Ernest Hemingway, Tyrone Power, Ava Gardner, etc., etc., etc. The Zanuck flies down to Morelia in the bull ring, and I come out in my suit of lights, and I'm scared plenty. But I do my Ketas, my Veronicas, and I throw the hat to him, and I say, for you. And he picks a megaphone up. The man's 5'3". And he looks around at everybody, and he says, the kid stays in the picture, and anybody who doesn't like it can quit. Puts the megaphone down and walks out. And from then on in, I knew I wanted to be him, not me.
That's great. And so you were cast at the swimming pool of the Beverly Hills Hotel and later at the El Morocco,
That's
your
right.
two biggest parts. Why don't we talk about the time the period when you were running Paramount?
It's a long period.
It's a long period, yeah. I think it was a very interesting time in Hollywood. It's a very special time for movies in the first place, but Paramount, I think, was kind of unique in a way. I read something somewhere, Robert Towne saying that he had something like an embarrassing fondness for Paramount at that time, and working with you then, and said it was a courtly studio. And you worked with Altman, Friedkin, Polanski, who else? Coppola. Wasn't that director's company, Bogdanovich, Friedkin, Coppola? That was while you were running Paramount,
yes,
right? Yeah.
A lot of other wonderful directors there too.
Many. I guess Schlesinger was a
John
little later.
Schlesinger.
Why don't we talk about some of them?
John Frankenheimer.
Frankenheimer,
He was a wonderful director.
Black Sunday you produced
yeah.
with Frankenheimer.
Hal Ashby.
Hal Ashby, of course. Harold and Maude was while you were there.
We worked with. I took chances with a lot of directors too.
Was Paper Moon at
Paper
Paramount?
Moon was
Yeah.
Peter Bogdanovich at
Great
Paper Moon.
Bogdanovich film.
He did a wonderful job. Do you know, at that time, Tatum O'Neal never acted, and Peter line-fed her. He just wanted her that look. It was a black and white film. It was a wonderful film.
I think he would have line-fed Olivier or one of
He
them.
could have. By the way, we worked with Olivier as well. We brought him back.
Right.
But it's strange with Peter how he saw the film. No one wanted to make the film, and Peter saw something in it. I bought his first film called Targets that he made for Roger Corman.
Right.
I looked at it for a half hour and we bought it, and I just thought it was that well done.
Yeah.
But Roman is an extraordinary director as well.
Polanski.
He's when I hired him to do Rosemary's Baby, everyone was against it. I said, bringing a Polak over to do this picture, you crazy? He said, no, he has something special, because I did my homework. I saw a knife in the water and cooled the sack, and he had a certain quality about him that was just different. And to make that picture work, it had to be different. And it is, in its way, a classical horror film, because there are no special effects in it. It's the acting itself and the way Roman directed it that made it work. When Rosemary's Baby opened, it exploded. And it was a different kind of a horror film. It had no special effects in it. And yet it scared the hell out of everybody.
I looked at the script once. The script is an exact blueprint for the movie. Every visual is perfectly kind of described.
He shoots for the camera.
Yeah.
He knows exactly what he wants.
He wrote it for the camera, yeah.
He wrote it for the camera, and he shoots for the camera, too.
This scene, we have a clip that actually we asked them to pull that is a scene that I don't think there's not a cut in the scene, and there are amazing performances by Cassavetes and Mia Farrow. Let's watch this scene.
Oh, yeah, well,
Don't be scared, it won't bite.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's really...
I feel it kicking. It's alive. It's moving.
I clean up some of this mess.
Let's talk about how you got the job running Paramount.
I was at 20th Century Fox. I owned a property called The Detective, and I signed Frank Sinatra for the lead and Mark Robeson to direct it, and it became a big book. I paid $5,000 for an option for it. I know one thing, as a producer, you have no shot unless you own the property. And I looked for properties, and I found this Roderick Thorpe, who had just written his first book, and I took an option out on it, and the book just so happened to become a huge bestseller. I gave it to Frank, he loved it, he signed Mark Robeson, I'm in business. And then I announced another picture I'm going to do with Alain Delon and Bridget Bardot called Chevalier. Alain was a good friend of mine, he was staying at my house with me, and I had a script by Maurice Richland, and he got Chevalier, very excited about it, and he was going to play Chevalier, and Bridget Bardot was going to play Mistinguett. And then I bought the Sam Shepard story. So I had 3 pictures going, with really nothing going, everything in preparation. And we make a big announcement at the Bistro Club with Alain and Chevalier that I have these. I'm doing the Chevalier story, and then I also announced The Detective with Frank Sinatra. Mm-hmm. And Peter Bart happened to have been there as one of the journalists who covered the press conference, and he was writing for the New York Times at the time. And he did a big story for me in the Sunday New York Times about this young producer who is beating all the big guys out on the important, interesting, exciting properties. And it caught the eye of a man named Charlie Bludon, who owned Paramount Pictures, who had just bought it, Gulf and Western. And I got a call from Greg Boucher, who was my attorney at the time. He says, fly into New York, we're going to meet with Charlie Bludon. I can't, Greg. He said, fly in, he wants you to run Paramount.
Okay, here's a clip from the film.
If I was really smart, I should have retired after Peter's article. Instead, Greg Boucher, the power broker of the town, calls and says, pack your bags, Evans. We're going to New York. I can't, Greg. I got plans. Break 'em. Charlie Bludon, who just bought Paramount, wants to meet you. He read the article about you in Sunday's New York Times. He's a doer, Bob, not a talker. Now pack your bags. And pack 'em I did.
So what happened when you got to New York?
I got to New York. I met Bludon. He says, I want you to become head of the studio at Paramount. I said, Mr. Bludon, he said, I don't want to hear anything. I want pictures. I want beautiful girls. I want to see glamour. We don't have that anymore. Our company's in 9th place. The 8 studios are in 9th. I want to be first. He said, but I don't have that much experience. He said, you don't need the experience. You need to have the smell, the instinct. That's all I go by. You're going to become head of Paramount. So I said, but I have a job at 20th. He said, get out of it. This is no kibitz to this guy. He wasn't playing games with me. Well, it's sort of exciting to hear this. I'm there 4 months now, and from being a neophyte producer without making one flick, I'm sent to London to run the English production there, really to close the studio down. When I got over there, every guy was 85 years old and over. And I looked at all the pictures they were making. They're all costume pieces. And there's one little picture called Alfie they were making that no one had paid any attention to. I said, that's the picture that's going to do well. And people laughed at it, and when it came out and did well, they looked at me a little differently. And within 4 months, Bludon calls me and says, pack your bags, Evans, you're moving to Los Angeles, you're becoming head of Paramount. And you better have a lot of mazel. It's not going to be easy. I said, are you sure you want me there, Charlie? He says, pack your bags. And I arrive at Paramount, and everyone laughed at me. They said, here, the ex-actor, not a good one at that per se, and he's running Paramount. And I was a laughing stock of the town. One paper said, Bludon's blowjob. Another one, Bludon's folly. And whatever happened, he didn't care. And I got so many calls for and the first 3 months that I'd be out of there within 2 months. I called Charlie in Switzerland. I said, Charlie, everyone say I'm getting fired. In front of Variety, they say I'm due to leave by the end of the month. He says, let me tell you something, Evans. First of all, never get me out of a meeting. Secondly, as long as I'm running Paramount, you're head of the studio. That's unless you call me like this again. And he hangs the phone up. And he always backed me. Always backed me. And he believed in me, and because of that, I worked my ass off to prove that.
Now, that sounds like an ideal kind of working environment. It sounds like you kind of got it into a shape that was something you could really work with, had a great team.
Quite the opposite.
Quite the opposite.
I was fodder for the press.
But at the studio, you had created a situation that was sort of comfortable for you, right?
Yes, for me, but the town didn't feel that way.
The town didn't feel that way.
Not
This
at all.
I have an article
Where
here.
did you find that?
This is we have a very strong research department here, and I want to read a little passage from this that I think expresses the attitude of the town towards you when you arrived. It begins with Robert Evans is an outrage. He has no right to be where he is. He has no more right to be where he is than a burglar. He has no credentials, none of the requirements for membership, never produced a film, doesn't know anything about movies, and so why should he be boss of Paramount with control over 25 pictures a year costing $100 million, influencing the cultural intake of millions of Americans? He's entirely too good-looking, too rich, too young, too lucky, and too damn charming. The Playboy Peacock of Paramount. Who the hell does he think he is? If there's anything Hollywood wants out of Robert Evans, it's to see him fail. And of course the image is you doing business from bed.
That's correct.
So I'm sure that helped to smooth things out with the people who were against you.
Well, let's start with doing things from bed.
Yeah.
I'm not a morning person.
Yeah,
I'm not good at breakfasts. And I learned this from Darryl Zanuck many years ago. He used to do business from his home or his hotel. If a writer or a director or an actor came up, he felt more comfortable sitting around a couch because for some reason a desk separates the artist from the executive. It's intimidating. You sit around a couch and talk, it's freedom. There's no discrimination, there's no feeling of authority. And I learned from that, and I learned working from my home made me closer to the artist and further away from the executives. It was not doing business by the rules. So I never showed up sometimes before 11:30, 12 o'clock. I was a joke of the town, as a matter of fact, because of it. But I accomplished more at my home than I did at the studio. I'd work at the studio till midnight many times, editing film. But if I didn't show up before 11:30, I'd never make a breakfast date. I'm just not good in the morning. Some people are great in the morning, not good at night. I'm good at night, not good in the morning. And it didn't play well with people, but when they say there's one thing Hollywood wanted out of Robert Evans was to see him fail, that's the truth, because I did not go by the rules. Because I believe rules are made to be broken, otherwise you stand still. But the more they said it, the harder I tried. And the harder I tried, I picked up some sevens and threw a lot of them.
Yeah, well, okay, let's talk about one of the sevens. One of your biggest successes as head of that studio is Love Story.
Love Story saved Paramount. We would have been out of business if it weren't for Love Story, because the motion picture business at that time was terrible. Not only Paramount. When I went into Paramount, Paramount was 9th out of 8 studios. We did less than 5% of Gulf and Western's volume. When I left Paramount, we did 55% of Gulf and Western's volume. But at that time...
And what were you ranked?
What is that?
What was your rank?
My raise?
Rank of the studio.
I was head of the studio.
But I mean, it was 9 when you got there. What was it when you left?
Uno.
Uno.
And for 4 straight years, Uno.
Let's talk about the first movie that you produced. The first movie you have the credit of producer, Chinatown.
At that time, I was the head of the studio as well as the producer of the film. That was my new deal.
Some kind of conflict of interest there, but...
Oh, a big one, because the picture was a hit. If it weren't, it wouldn't have been a conflict.
Right.
And I was allowed to make a picture a year and still run the studio. And when the picture was a big hit, everyone resented the fact that why should he make pictures and why does he pay attention to our pictures? So I had to make a choice, either stay as a head of the studio or make my own flicks. But Chinatown was quite an experience, I must tell you.
Yeah, one of the best pictures you were involved with, I think.
I think so, and it was voted by the Library of Congress amongst the 75 pictures of the 20th century that's vaulted in perpetuity. And there was more problems making that picture than any other picture we've ever made. First of all, no one wanted to make it. When distribution read it, they thought it was in Chinese. When the picture was finished, they didn't know what to do with it. They said no one will understand it. No one understood it until it opened. And it's strange. Everybody understood it.
Yeah, and it was a great success. Of all the great directors you worked with, Robert Altman, Francis Coppola, Friedkin, Polanski is, I think, a special one, and he's actually in the clip that we're about to look at here, where he plays a very interesting role.
He's an actor, too. That's why Rowan is an actor.
Great actor, too. It also has John Huston and another great director.
Another great director. And the picture is Rowan at his best.
Rowan at his best. Let's see him.
Okay. They lose their noses. Next time you lose the whole thing. Cut it off and feed it to my goldfish. Understand? Understand?
I understand, Gil. I understand.
All right.
If somebody tells me that they really like my tie,
Yeah.
what should I do?
If one person tells you they like your tie, that's okay. If 5 or 6 people tell you they like your tie, take it home and shred it. Because background makes foreground. If 5 people tell me they like my shirt, I'll never wear it again. Because the shirt's there to make me look good. Your tie's there to make you look good. Same in movies. If your background is so extraordinary, the foreground are your actors. You shouldn't be looking at the background. You should be looking at the actors. And background doesn't make foreground, and very few people understand that. They think, God, if it was complimenting me on my dress, or if it was kind of complimenting me on my suit, wrong. By mistake, subliminally, everything you have should compliment you.
That house, which you've had for how long?
Older than you are.
It's 30.
34, 35 years.
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, it's a fascinating place to visit. It's filled with pictures, and there's a screening room where thousands and thousands of movies have been watched by people, and
talked about afterwards.
And talked about afterwards. A great place to watch a movie. When did you get it? Did you get it as soon as you went to?
As soon as I moved in, I got it. It was built for me, for a very good reason, to do my homework.
You have a real history with the house, because as your career has had its highs and lows, you've kept that place, which is
by hook or crook.
By hook or crook. How have you done it?
Well, I had it up until 1980. I never had a mortgage on the house, and owned the house myself and finished it all myself. I never had a decorator. I did everything myself. I went south in 1980 for a lot of reasons. And one, I had a cocaine situation that I had a misdemeanor on, and I was exonerated on, but it didn't do me any good.
Yeah.
And my contract was dropped at Paramount for a while. Then I was involved in the Cotton Club, and that was the worst experience of my entire life. It stayed with me for 8 years. There was a murder that took place on the picture. And the picture itself was everything I didn't want. I originally wanted to make that picture. I thought it was going to be The Godfather with music. And it should have been. There are 11 musical numbers left out. And I really did it because my papa was a dentist in Harlem at 133rd and Lennox Avenue. And at the beginning, I wanted to devote just the first 10 frames to, Dear Pop, wherever you are, this is for you, Bobby. And I never even went to the opening. And it was a disastrous situation financially and every other way. And for the entire decade of the 80s, the only salary I made was a male model at Francis Denny Cosmetics. And my income went from $11 million in 1979 to $37 in 1989. I didn't have enough money to pay my electric bills. I did mortgages out of my house. My brother helped me out with some money. Jack was there for me. He got my house back for me.
Yeah. I asked for this. What's this?
Yeah. Well, it says, Bobby, back home, beautiful. Jack, with glasses at his eyes. When he knew I lost the house, he missed the house terribly because we've watched 400 or 500 films there together. He has his chair, I have my chair. We see 2 pictures a night, and we talk about the pictures afterwards. And he's the only guy who has a clicker to the gate to come into my house. And when he found out I lost the house to a man named Tony Murray, he got on a plane the day his picture was over, flew over to Monte Carlo, waited for Tony Murray at the Hotel de Paris for 2 hours. He didn't let him up, had to sign hundreds of autographs waiting for him. When I was invited upstairs and Tony was shaving, we go to the Red Cross ball that night, and he got on the floor and said, "Would you please give Evans back his house?" He said, "Are you crazy? I bought the house. It's my house." He said, "No, to you it's a piece of real estate. To us it's our home. We all go there and watch movies and talk about it. It's like the center of our little creative community, and we don't want to lose that center. Please give him back the house." He said, "Well, it's my home." I said, "Would you please give him back my house? I'm asking you to do it. I just finished a film. I'm flying back in the next plane. I flew over just to see you. I'm on the bathroom on my knees begging you to give me back this house. Please do it." To make a long story short, Tony went around all summer. He said, "These people in showbiz, they're all crazy. Jack Nicholson flies over the Hotel de Paris, gets on his knees to give this guy back his house." But him going over there made Tony change his mind, and he gave me back the house at just the price I paid for it. So I got my house back, and we've seen lots of movies there since. That's all I can say.
All these great films that you did during that period, all these great directors you worked with, maybe one of the key ones. Now, you'd done one, I think Nichols had done Catch-22 with Paramount, isn't that right? A great film that's rarely seen. Yeah.
It came before its time.
Too. Yeah, it did. And I think it's kind of being rediscovered now in a way.
I hope so. It deserves it.
Yeah, it's a very strong film. He did another film for you.
His film for me indirectly saved Paramount. Peter Bart asked him to do a presentation reel for me to show to the board of the directors. They were ready to close the studio and sell it to the Jewish cemetery directly behind the studio because business was really bad. Not that our business at Gulf and Western, Paramount was getting 95% of the publicity and only bringing in 5% of the volume. And they didn't like that, and they wanted Charlie Bluton to stick with his coffee selling and zinc buying and not be involved in show business. So he called me and he said, "Bob, I think we're going to have to close the studio. I'm sorry." So he said, "Give me a half an hour with the board. I know we got 2 shots, Charlie. Buy another quarter if you can." I said, "Impossible. Can I have a half hour with the board?" I said, "The last person they want to see is you." He said, "Give me a half hour." I said, "Okay, fly out next Monday. Between 1:30 and 2 you can meet with the board. But I don't promise anything." So Peter went to Mike Nichols and said, "Do me a favor, Mike. Shoot a presentation reel that Bob will work with you, and he wants to bring it to New York with him to show to the board of directors. Otherwise, there's not going to be a Paramount here." And Mike shot a 40-minute presentation. And I took the can with me on the red eye. They didn't even give me a hotel room. I had to change in the bathroom of the Plaza Hotel. And I went up to the Gulf and Western office. And I had to do the unexpected to get their attention. So I walked into the office. I didn't have a tie on. I wasn't shaven very well. There were 18 smileless guys sitting there. And I says, "Charlie, I know you want me to resign, but I'd like to resign right now before I even show this piece of film to you. The only thing I ask is, when I sign off, I want the board to come into the office, into the projection room, and look at this 40 minutes of film we have. And then I'll sign off." And it was a $300,000 sign-off because I had a 5-year contract. And I signed the papers. They were happy to see me sign off. Listen, it was worth seeing the film for 40 minutes to get rid of $1,300,000. So I signed all the papers. I said, "Well, now I have no job. If I make a phone call, it's on my own dime. If I say to a hotel, it's on my dollar. I'm free. I'm going to go away for 6 months and just get some sun. But now would you please come into the projection room?" The 18 smileless men and Charlie Marty Davis walk in there. And I show them various films we have in varying stages of production. But I have an ace up my sleeve. It was the month of October. And the last thing was Love Story. I said, Christmas is coming and Love Story is going to capture the hearts of the world. And I show 5 minutes of Love Story. And then I say, and as of January 1st, we're starting The Godfather, which will be Paramount's next Christmas picture. And it's interesting. Paramount didn't buy these properties and spend $1 million and a half for it. Paramount bought Love Story for nothing and developed it itself. We paid $25,000 for Godfather and developed it for $25,000 to make it the great book it is today. And Love Story and Godfather are the two biggest sellers in the last decade. And I hope they're going to be the two biggest pictures of the 70s. And with that, I say goodbye and thank you for having me here. And curtain closes. Now, I have no job. And Marty Davis comes down to me and says, go back to the conference room. I hear yelling going on in the screening room. And Pluton walks in 20 minutes later. He says, okay, go back to work. I said, I got no job, Charlie. He says, don't play games with me, Evans. Go back to work. I said, I got no job. I said, what do you want, a raise? I want total autonomy. He said, I can't give you total autonomy. It's against the rules. I'll be thrown out. I said, well, I'm quitting. He said, I can't give you total autonomy. It's a lot of money you have total autonomy. I said, that's what I want. He goes, you really mean that? He says, that's the only way I stay. He says, hold it here. He goes back into the projection room there, and they hear more yelling and screaming coming out. He comes back in. He says, all right. You got your way. You got total autonomy. You better not fall on your ass. You better have a lot of mazel. Go out there and make pictures.
And you made Godfather shortly after that.
Godfather was made after that, and a lot of Harold and Maude was made after that.
Right. Harold and Maude, without that autonomy, that one wouldn't have happened.
Never.
Now, Godfather, I think clearly the key ingredient of The Godfather is Francis Coppola coming into it. A gangster movie becomes this operatic and most memorable, movie of the decade.
That's the perfect word, operatic.
Yeah. Where did the idea of having Francis...
I didn't particularly want Francis until I met with him. And he's brilliant. And he's operatic. And really what makes the picture work is the opera of it.
Yeah.
When you can see Marlon Brando when he dies, and you cry for him after he's killed hundreds of people, that's opera.
I think we want to look at a scene, Al Pacino, in The Godfather.
I'd love to look at it again.
I'm talking about a dishonest cop, a crooked cop who got mixed up in the rackets and got what was coming to him. That's a terrific story. And we have newspaper people on the payroll, don't we, Tom? They might like a story like that.
They might. They just might.
It's not personal, Sonny. It's strictly business.
The kid stays in the picture. Why'd you write that book?
I wrote it for one person. I wrote it for my son. My son, from the age of 7 to 17, saw his father go from royalty to infamy, so shrivel up into a pariah. And kids can be very mean to other kids. And going through school, through his entire high school, I was a detriment to him, and kids made fun of him. And the day he graduated, it was on a Saturday, and the headline of the Los Angeles Times was, Bob Evans involved in murder. And there were 1,400 parents there seeing their children graduate, and I was one of them. And they all walked down in their hats, and I stood there like I was an insect, that I was such a horrible influence to my son, and I was so embarrassed about myself being his father. I felt so badly for the kid, because he never showed it. He always loved me. He would always live next to me. He would never leave me. He wouldn't even live at his mother's house. He would stay right next to me. He was scared for me. And I wanted to go away and write it, because he can't talk it. And let him know in writing who his old man really was, for better or for worse. And it was painful. It wasn't cathartic. I didn't care if 2 people bought the book. It didn't matter. I only want one person to have that book. It was my legacy to him. I didn't have any money to leave him. But I just wanted him to know who his old guy really was. And he read the book, and we've never talked about it. Mm. And from the book came the audio. And it was an appendix to it, really. And from the audio now has come a movie. Sometimes from a little acorn, forests can grow. And because of its very purity of writing it, And I went away where I only could hear crickets. No one could find me. And I poured out my heart to him. And boy, I showed him all my warts, all my mistakes, and everything. But I let him know I really loved him, and that's all that matters in life.
Did Josh see the new movie,
Yes,
the Kid
did.
Stays in the Picture?
He did.
When
And
did he do
he
that?
looked at me, threw his arms around me, and didn't say anything. We've never talked about it. We don't have to.
Yeah.
It's an unspoken word. See,
Right.
writing stays, talk disappears.
Yeah, it must be a peculiar thing. There's so much personal stuff in these.
It's a lot of hurt.
Yeah.
And a lot of love, too, by the way.
All right, let's talk about this period when things went wrong for you. Starting
It's a
with this,
long period.
yeah, it's a decade. The cocaine arrest is kind of
That's
kicks
a good
it
opening
off.
act. Yeah, it's a hell of an opening act. Never to return again. Paramount, the company I'd saved from the graveyard, gave a terse statement to the press concerning my new infamy. Evans is not an employee of Paramount and has not been an employee of Paramount for years. He has an independent contractor producing pictures for us. May 2nd, 1980. What a difference a day makes.
I guess the whole situation with Cotton Club came after that.
It was a terrible situation. It's called...
Well, now you never told me about who was the woman who was convicted of this murder?
A woman named Lady Jacobs, who I met through a chauffeur whose limousine service I owned. I was driving my kid back home to his mother, and the limousine driver said, "Mr. Evans, I got a very wealthy divorcee who's just a new client of ours. She wants to invest in movies." I said, I don't need to meet her, but well, she's awfully beautiful. She said, "Oh, okay, bring her around." And I met her, and she's a Southern belle. She just got divorced. She lived in Dallas, and a lovely lady. I must tell you, to me, she was a lovely lady. And through her, she said, I said, you don't want to go in movies. I said, well, I can invest $10, $20 million to buy my limousine service. I said, but don't put money in movies. It's a terrible investment. Well, I have a friend of mine who could put $100 million in easily because he's a member of the Rothschild family. Well, he wasn't a member of the Rothschild family. She introduced me to him. His name was Roy Radin. I met him twice. I knew her better than him. I had no idea anything about either of them. I mean, I invited her to New York to meet my friends. I mean, she was a very nice lady. That's all I knew. I was just very cavalier, very dumb, and it's hard to believe, but very naive. But I had nothing to do with anything to do with... there was no investment. There was never a dime that went past any of us for any investment. Mm-hmm. But my name was connected because I knew them. And that's all that was necessary.
Right.
For a good reason. I get ink. And I'm not cautious. I'm cavalier. And I paid the $2 for it. But it went on for 8 years. I was totally exonerated of everything. But when you're exonerated, you end up on the 28th page in the bottom. When you're involved, you're on the first page above the title of the paper.
Yeah.
So no one reads about the exoneration, they read about the involvement. And that stuck with me like flypaper.
Yeah. All this stuff is in the film. Did you want that to be in the film? I mean, it's in the book. The film is based on the book. The film is based on the book.
It's all in the film. That was big arguments we had. It had to be in there. You can't tell half a story. This is not a puff piece. Let me tell you this. It's a lot easier to watch than to live. And I paid my... Hey, I had a stroke. What more can I tell you? And they thought I was going to die. I had 3 strokes in 2 days. And they never thought I'd walk. They never thought I'd talk. I can't believe I'm talking to you now. I can't believe I'm alive talking to you because for 6 months I couldn't move my right side of my mouth, my right hand, my right arm. It took me 6 months to pick up a fork. I had to learn how to walk again, heel, toe. And the doctors are so cold. They said, get used to one thing. You're never going to have the life you had. You'll have to get used to a different way of living. you're most probably in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, at best a four progress. Well, let me tell you something. I fooled him. It's called staying in the picture, pal. As you stay in the picture, not movies only. Staying in the picture, staying in life. And staying in life is will. And I hope my picture gives other people the inspiration that if I can do it, they sure in hell can do it.
Yeah, in a way, I think you've already sort of lived 3 acts. What do you do now? What happens now?
I'm back to my first act. I was reborn because when I had my stroke, they didn't think I would live. And I'm here talking to you right now. What am I doing? I've never been busier in my life. The Kid Stays in the Picture is opening tomorrow and in a few weeks from now around the country. But I'm doing a picture right now in Toronto called How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days with Kate Hudson and Matthew McConaughey, and it's being produced by Linda Ost and Christine Peters and myself. I'm writing the sequel to my book called The Fat Lady Sang, and she did sing. I heard her sing when I fell down. It was Ella Fitzgerald singing It's a Wonderful World. And I saw the white light. I'm busier than I've ever been. So I'm really in Act 1.
Great. Well, I think when I'm sure you'll be back on the show when Charlie's back to talk about some of these projects as they come to.
I hope I'll be back in these projects talking about something together with you that we'll be doing together. I've always wanted to work with you. You know that.
Well, we just did.
Well, we just started anyway.
All right. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Wes.
Congratulations on the picture.
Thanks.